Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to OnScreen, the official podcast of the Total Screen, in which we talk about the best of TV, video game, and film. My name is Tyson Gifford.
My name's Will.
And let's get started with some news, then, for our segment On Beat. The first news story of these three is that Lovecraft Country was canceled. It was a surprise to some people because the series actually did fairly well and was pretty well received. We talked about Lovecraft Country on our old podcast, and I think we both kind of came to the consensus that it kind of fell apart.
It was okay. It was an okay show.
It started good. The first episode was really good.
I'm not quite sure exactly because I was reading the article and it seems like it came down to like it was HBO's decision to not renew it. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly clear like why HBO came to that decision.
I think it might have to do with just the pitch for the second season.
Yeah, maybe.
The second season was kind of going away from book material.
Well, they had no book material. Yeah. It was the one book and they adapted that.
Yeah, but it was going away kind of from like the themes of the book too and into something else that just
I saw like
and not that interesting.
I saw something pitch where like it was like gonna be like a new world and there was like gonna be zombies and I was like I don't know, like a post-apocalyptic zombie thing. Like it's so tired at this point.
Yeah,
like so many things did zombies.
Zombies are kind of worn thin.
I felt like with the setup that they had.
Yeah, they had
you could do like you could do a lot more creative things than just to have like zombies.
They had the whole world of Eldritch Horror to draw from.
Yeah,
and they went with zombies instead. It's just lazy. Lovecraft Country is like, like I said, I think I can speak for both of us based on how we reacted when we watched it. Was a show, it started good. It had like a lot of good kind of premises and ideas going into it. Like the first episode was really good. Had one of the most tense scenes I've ever seen in the first episode of a show, with that car chase. And then it just kind of fell apart, like as it went on. It just started making less and less sense. They did that whole episode under the museum that should have been like a slam dunk, like, Indiana Jones type episode or something, but it was just so kind of like lazily put together, that it just didn't really work.
Uh-huh.
That's a show I'm going to look back on and go, that show had 2 great episodes and then everything else was a mess.
I mean, I'm not really bothered by the news that's not coming back, to be honest.
Yeah, same here. I'm kind of almost relieved. Our next news story is about Assassin's Creed. So you know more about this story than I do, so.
Yeah, probably because I just told you about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this morning, it was reported by Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, reported that Ubisoft is planning the next Assassin's Creed to be called Assassin's Creed Infinity, and he's reporting that it's going to be a live service platform for Assassin's Creed.
I'll say what I said when you said this to me before the podcast started. Yuck.
Yeah, yuck. He said they set out to create a massive online platform that changes over time, and Infinity will contain multiple settings with room to expand to other settings in the months and years following its debut. Individual games on the platform might look and feel different, but they will all be connected. Shortly after the report put out, Ubisoft confirmed the news. They put out a press release and a tweet. Yeah, no. I don't think this is what anybody wanted from future Assassin's Creed games. I hate this.
R.I.P. gaming industry.
Alright, yeah, it's R.I.P. gaming industry. It's the thing, like, live service game, like, everybody wants to have a live service game, and the thing is, like, this is different for the simple reason I like, okay, you got Fortnite, you got, I guess, Battlefield's gonna be live service, you got, like, Genshin Impact. those make sense to a degree because those are all multiplayer games.
Yeah.
And to a degree, that makes sense. Assassin's Creed is single player. It's always been a single player game. You know, with probably the exception of Unity, where they had like the co-op thing they were experimenting with. It doesn't really make sense for that to be a live service game, like a live service platform. There's no multiplayer in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Like, is this going to suddenly have multiplayer now? Like, what's going on? So it's just weird. And the other thing, like, about that is, like, yeah, I hate this because, like, you know, I could just ignore it. I don't care about Assassin's Creed, but man, like, imagine, like, if this is the way games are going. Like, imagine if Nintendo said, okay, after Breath of the Wild 2, Zelda's going to be a live service platform.
Yeah.
That would be devastating, to me at least.
Yeah. Do you think Ubisoft saw the reactions that Square Enix had with Babylon AD and was like, you know, and then they were just like, oh shit, you know, like knowing that they had this in the works? Because I mean, it's, you know, with their confirmation, it has to have been in the works long enough that there was really no turning back. You know, this is like the direction that was probably settled on quite a while ago. Babylon AD got switched to like live service and it just had such a huge negative reaction at E3.
Right. I think this is a response of like somebody at Ubisoft like saying, oh, we need a live service game like Fortnite. So we need to be making that money. And then they looked at like their biggest franchises and they said, Assassin's Creed is their biggest franchise, so let's do that. I think that's the thinking.
It's disheartening.
It is disheartening. And it was also reported that several men accused of abuse remain in lead roles after this reorganization, which led to complaints on the internal forums. Ubisoft spokeswoman says they had their case rigorously reviewed by a third party and were either exonerated or underwent appropriate disciplinary actions. That's a quote from Jason Schreier on his Twitter. That's disgusting. That's sick. I mean, I don't understand how these people can, you know, like have those kinds of accusations leveled at them and still be working on the biggest project for Ubisoft, you know, in lead roles. That's disgusting.
Hey, well, it just makes it so that consciences are clear if they cancel that project and it just gets crushed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
As it should be.
Absolutely. But I just hate like this. I hate this push in the industry towards live service games and shit. Yeah. I just want to buy a game and play it. I just want to sit down and play a game.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay when there's like one or two, but when it just starts everything moving in that direction, it's like,
right.
That's just not good, you know? I mean, the live services field was already relatively full, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't try to like crowd it in with more shit, you know? Not everything needs to be that.
Yeah, exactly. I think ultimately it's bad for the industry because, you know, if everybody tries to convert to a live service platform and everything and they flood the market, that could potentially, and this might sound overly alarmist, but it could potentially lead to an industry crash.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion.
It's partially on the gamers too, man, because gamers are playing that shit.
Yeah, people are spending money. Nope, absolutely. Business-wise, I don't blame Ubisoft for doing it, but it's, as a consumer, as somebody who plays games, I don't like it.
Yeah. So let's move on to our last news story, which is about the Switch Pro.
Yeah. No, it's the Switch OLED edition.
But it's all powered up, right? Like it's got it's going to be like PS5 level graphics, right?
No, it's got an OLED screen.
But like, you know, it's 4K, right?
Where are you getting your news from?
4K HDR, right? Right?
No, where are you getting your news from?
Full ray tracing. Confirmed.
Ray tracing. Confirmed. Oh man, the Switch OLED was announced yesterday, and boy, was that fun. That was a fun time on the internet.
It was Schadenfreude Christmas for me.
It was Schadenfreude Christmas for you. I don't care. Like, I don't care about this. Now, I will say this, though. This isn't anything out of the ordinary for Nintendo. People are shocked. But Nintendo's done this, like, screen upgrade before. They released, like, the DS XL.
Yeah.
Which is nothing more than larger screens for a DS. And then they did the same thing with the 3DS XL. Hell, before the DS, they even, like, introduced, they did a Game Boy Pocket with a backlight. And they called it the Game Boy Light. And they only released it in Japan. And the funny thing about the Game Boy Light is they released that in April of 1998. And then in October of 1998, they released the Game Boy Color. So they released two Game Boy upgrade models in the same damn year. Like, that's excessive. I'm just like laughing at that because I'm thinking about like if Twitter and YouTube and all that shit were around in 1998 and these insiders and like, I'm imagining a scenario where
insiders in quotation marks.
I'm imagining a scenario where people are like going on and on about color Game Boy for months, about there being a color Game Boy, and then Nintendo announces the Game Boy Light.
Yeah, this is just like, I was not a fan of the whole like Switch Pro rumor stuff because it just didn't make sense.
You were not a fan of that.
It made zero sense from a business standpoint for Nintendo to have any interest in doing that.
So expand upon that. Like, what makes zero sense about upgrading
Switch?
The Switch
is insanely successful right now.
Yes.
It's 4 years, it's more than 4 years in, and it hasn't even had a price drop yet.
Yes.
So it just doesn't make sense to divide your market, which is like if you think about it, I mean, 3DSi, or what was it? No, it was the new 3DS allowed you, now you can get like Xenoblade Chronicles is only for that, or like the SNES, virtual console lineup that was exclusive to that version of the system. That's a market divide. You don't want that. When you're extremely successful, you don't want that. That's something you do when your market starts dipping.
Yeah.
And the Switch market is not dipping.
Do you think the new 3DS was because the market was dipping?
I think it was at that point, wasn't it? Like, the Switch is still sold out.
Yeah, Switch is sold out.
So like, this isn't even, like, you can't increase the sales of the Switch.
We're in a situation where, at least in the United States, the Switch has went like 30 months being the number one best-selling system.
But it's not just that. It's like, it's almost impossible to find them.
Yeah.
So like, you can't really sell more.
Well, there's also a chip shortage, which is limiting the amount that they can produce and ship.
I don't know how much that's affecting Switch though, because
I don't know.
It's an old
you said
chip
they're
that was
sold
manufactured
out.
in bulk,
Right.
So it's just a matter of like, Nintendo is a pretty conservative company, so they're not going to like risk like really high manufacture rates that go beyond that. And they're producing as much as they can, and they're selling everything they're putting out.
So why release this model with an OLED screen? Like what's the impetus for that?
I think that there's got to be something that we kind of don't know about that's going on with their supply chain. That would be my guess, and that they're trying to transition over to something else. And right now it's going to be like, it's a third pillar in the family, but it's going to be a transition out.
Do you think they're going to discontinue the regular Switch in favor of this OLED model?
I think eventually. I don't think they will right away, but I think they probably got contacted by Sharp or whoever makes their LCD screen, and they probably said, we're going to stop making those screens in, about a year. We need the manufacturing space that we use that for new screen tech that we're working on, or new screens that we're going to be producing. There's going to be something along those lines that is going to create a supply chain change
That's
for
possible.
Nintendo.
That's possible. I see, on my end, I see this as Nintendo trying to maintain interest in the Switch, trying to make sure that it doesn't get stale as it enters, according to Nintendo, the halfway point of its lifespan. I see this as also a way for Nintendo to avoid having to do a price drop on Switch hardware, because now they can point to the regular ass Switch and say, well, that's $300. That's $350. So you got a cheaper Switch option now, kind of slyly without ever having to touch the price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't need to touch the price,
No.
And the system's selling, you don't lower the price when your demand exceeds supply. That's just not something you do as a company, So I don't think, but I definitely don't think a Pro model makes any sense, just because you don't want to divide your market when you're doing this well.
No, I don't think so. I get why people want a Switch Pro.
People just want better looking graphics. They want, better performance.
Want better performance from their games. I get it. And I get, there's some games that could have used better performance on, like The Witcher 3 probably would have benefited more from a more powerful Switch. I get that. That makes a lot of sense. But it's clear that at least at this time, it doesn't make much sense for Nintendo. So they decided, not to do that.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be a pro model of the Switch. And even though Nintendo says that it's like the halfway point in its life cycle, I don't buy that either. I think this is like when
that's what
Sony...
Nintendo says. I'm just going by what
I know.
I'm just CEO of Nintendo said.
I'm just saying I think it's more along the lines of what Sony would say. Like, they'd say, oh,
Sony,
you know, our PlayStation has 10-year life cycle, and then they put out a new system 5 years later. Yeah. It's still a 10-year life cycle because they still have some games coming out to it. And I think that's what Nintendo's going to try to do, because in the past, Nintendo has not done well on console transitions. And by that, I don't mean that they don't do well with their next console. I just mean that, like, there's usually like a year gap between when their old system basically dies out and when their new system launches.
I saw some speculation from Digital Foundry that maybe the 4K stuff came from some cross wires. Like, there's some speculation that maybe like sources like Bloomberg got confused and we're talking about the OLED Switch and the next gen Switch at the same time, because they just like got some information from both of those and just mixed them up.
Yeah, because I don't think the next gen Switch is that far off.
Right.
I think it's probably like a year and a half, 2 years off from the next gen Switch. And by that, I don't mean Switch Pro. I mean like...
Right, the next gen, the actual next gen Switch. The one that's probably going to...
Like Wii to Wii U to Switch to whatever this is, you know?
The one that's probably actually going to have PS4 graphics.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll probably have close to PS4 Pro graphics.
Say.
If it's using the chip that I think it is, it'll be somewhere like just below like PS4 Pro as far as like ability.
That would make sense, yeah.
So, you know, which, you know, PS4 Pro isn't that big of an upgrade over PS4 compared to like the Xbox and the Xbox One X, you know? That was a bigger jump. The Pro wasn't that big of a jump.
Yeah, and I remember like Sony fans being disappointed by that at the time, because like Xbox fans were like able to like run laps around them. Like, oh, we got the most powerful, whatever.
It'll be interesting though, because even though it's going to be like, you know, power wise, it's going to be around PS4 Pro, around that area. Like, it's also going to be a much more modern processor. And because of that, it's going to be doing some things that you're going to be more used to on like PS5 and stuff like that, because it's just like more modern shaders and stuff like that are, you know, kind of built in the same way that there was stuff that like the Wii U even was doing that, like, you know, PS3 and 360 couldn't do, even though it was power wise about equivalent, you know?
Yeah.
There was like certain kinds of shaders and stuff it was using that those systems couldn't because they were just too old. They didn't have the modern architecture.
There's some shaders, but I also heard that, you know, like Wii U was hamstrung in comparison to the older systems by the CPU Nintendo was using, and the way that was set up. I heard developers really hated that CPU.
There's always going to be like trade-off things and stuff. Yeah. I mean, but the other thing is that a new Switch, a next generation Switch, what people thought was going to be in the Switch Pro, it's probably almost certainly going to have DLSS, which PS5 and, you know, Xbox One definitely could not do.
Oh, for sure.
So that's going to make a difference. So it'll be about PS4 Pro power, but it'll probably look better because of things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's just a completely different topic. I think that's a year and a half, you know, off, basically.
That's about, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years off.
I'm guessing
is my estimate.
Early 2023 is my guess.
I'm going to say 2024 at the earliest. That's mine.
It could be. It could also be the case of which Nintendo says 2023 and then doesn't put it out until 2024.
Right.
As a Nintendo fan, we're all used to that too, right?
Yes, we're super used to that. But as far as like the OLED Switch, the interesting thing to me is it's literally just an upgrade if you're playing it in handheld mode. There's no benefits if you play your Switch dock.
Except the Ethernet port.
Except the Ethernet port, I guess.
And the dock just looks nicer. Just definitely looks nicer.
It does, yeah. I love the redesign of the dock.
Yeah. Do you notice it's got like a kind of like a lining on the inside now? So like,
yeah.
So that's going to be really nice too. Because people were scratching up their screens on the old dock, you know?
Yeah, it's got a lining on the inside. It's got some new vents this, probably because like the OLED screen probably requires some extra venting. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the Switch would run fucking hot, like even, in its dock.
Yeah.
So it's just probably a smart idea to add more vents, period. Even if you're not doing anything extra.
It's got like, I noticed like it's got like rounded edges now on the dock. Yeah, it looks pretty slick. And they got a white dock now. I kind of want that white dock. I'm not going to lie.
You know what the best thing about the Switch OLED model is? Is that it's coming out the same day as Metroid Dread.
Yeah. And
it basically looks like it's themed after Metroid Dread, too.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, right? And I don't think that's actually intentional.
No, but it ended up being that, and it's coming out the same day, and that makes it like, that Metroid is getting the coolest, like, variation console of all of them. All the other ones just got, like, different color Joy-Cons or, like, decals on them, but, the Metroid, the official Metroid Switch model actually has a better screen.
Yeah. And that release date is intentional. They intentionally set Metroid Dread and the Switch OLED released on the same day. And you know what? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. As a big Metroid fan, anything that draws more attention to Metroid is good for me.
Right? Exactly. Because people are probably going to go into the store looking for the new Switch. They're going to see Metroid. Hopefully that sells more copies of Metroid.
Yeah, definitely. This could be the best-selling Metroid ever.
Yeah, it definitely has.
It's Switch, and Switch kind of has been doing that with every franchise that's been hitting it,
Right, yeah. Even Pikmin 3, which is just the Wii U port, is now the best-selling Pikmin game of all time. I think it sold like 3 million copies already.
We should do an episode of the podcast where we do a full topic about Switch sales with franchises.
Okay.
Like what franchise, how like so many franchises on the Switch are the best selling entry in.
I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think Advance Wars is going to be the best selling Advance Wars game.
Oh, almost assuredly. It wouldn't take much, I don't think.
No, I don't think it would.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a game like, what's that, Sakura of Rice and Rune, like that game's selling like millions. Yeah. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, if that was like a WiiWare game, it would have sold like, 200,000 copies or something or less.
See, and this is a good point because like, this is where Nintendo needed to be. Even with the Wii, it sold a lot of consoles, but a lot of those people were not buying games. They were just happy with
it was the Wii Sports, Wii Fit system.
Wii Fit, they were just happy with that stuff, and that was fine. But now Nintendo has a system that's not only selling to that level, but the people who are buying it are actively buying games, like a lot of games.
It has a big attach rate.
People are devouring games on this.
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge, like, people look at the sales and they're like, yeah, they look really good, but it's not that big. It's like, well, that's only like half the picture. Yeah. The other half is like how ravenous the Switch owners are going on other games, that's what's really the big story. When you have games selling like 30 million plus copies and stuff,
Right? Exactly. So.
It's kind of insane. But that brings us to an end of our On Beat segment. Next up, we're going to be talking about what we've been watching and playing on our segment On Tap. What we've been watching. What we've been playing. What's on tap. So for the first story on Tap, I watched The Good, the Bart, and the Loki, which is the Simpsons MCU crossover thing. It's just like a 7-minute short, basically.
Mm-hmm. How was it? You told me it was surprisingly good. I was poo-pooing it on the podcast last because I don't know. Good. I'm so disenchanted with the Simpsons at this point.
It's quite good, and it reaffirms to me that this is exactly what the Simpsons should be doing. Like they need to end the show, and they just need to do shorts. And I don't just mean like crossovers. Like they just need to like put up short films on Disney Plus every so often, or put out like in front of movies, like the way they did with that one that was in front of Onward last year. They need to do more stuff like that with the Simpsons. And and less like just keeping the series going, because the series just doesn't work anymore. It's, you know, they ran out of stuff. And so like, I think they can get more focused if they're just trying to tell like a cute little 5-minute story, you know, something like that, like works better for the Simpsons now. So I think what your concern was for this was that they showed like a lot of like Springfield characters dressed like MCU characters, and you're like, oh, this is
a bunch of corny Marvel jokes.
Yeah, but the thing is that's like just one quick scene and it kind of means nothing.
Oh, really?
Like they don't like spend too much time on that. Basically, without going into too much spoilers, because I think you'd actually enjoy it. It just kind of like,
okay,
Loki gets sent to Earth because he misbehaved, you know, again, and he gets sent to Springfield, and then he's just kind of gets tied up into the Simpsons family, and that's what it's really about. It's him and the Simpsons family, and then everything else is kind of just like extraneous at a certain point. It's just like one scene or something. And then there's like a bunch of like post-credit scenes where you get like a lot of like the kind of Marvel joke kind of stuff is more like, it's more there than it is in the actual thing, you know?
Right.
And that just makes it easier to digest when it's just like a little post-credit scene or something. But yeah, it's good. Like I said, I don't want to go into too much because, you know, I think you'd actually enjoy it. You should check it out. I mean, it's only 7 minutes too, but I actually thought it was quite enjoyable. It's the most fun I've had with Simpsons in a while.
Okay.
In a long time.
I'll check it out.
Next up is something that you watched. I haven't watched this yet, but Netflix has this thing called Fear Street that's going to be like 3 movies that air like every week, basically. Like 1 week, then the next week's the next one, the next week's the last one.
I think the next one's supposed to air soon. I'm not
I think it's
sure exactly.
I think it's next week or something, or maybe it's already out. I don't know.
If it's weekly, it should be out pretty soon.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you watched the first one, so this is an R.L. Stein adaptation, I believe.
Yeah, it is, sorta, because I don't believe this is directly an adaptation of any specific Fear Street book. I think it uses, like, the setting. It uses a setting and I think some of the lore to tell, like, its own original story, from what I can gather.
So what can you tell us about it? How was it?
It was pretty decent, but I had issues with it. But as like I guess as a teen slasher, it was pretty decent. I think I really loved the opening scene with Maya Hawke. That was reminiscent of Scream, where she's like being chased around the mall by like the skeleton mask killer. I actually think that was like the best part in the movie.
I mean, some would argue that scene in Scream was the best part of that movie, you know?
True. I don't know. I loved the entire movie of Scream though, so.
Yeah, but definitely Scream, that opening scene was really strong.
Yeah, that opening
and famous.
scene, that was super memorable. Yeah, definitely. After that though, it kind of gets muddier. I didn't really love like any of the main cast. I thought like the main like characters were like so. I didn't really care for them too much, and there's like a lot of sloppy lore in it. Like because the whole thing revolves around supposedly in like the 1600s, they killed a woman that they decided was like a witch, and she put a curse on the town. And apparently, like, as they're going through it, they find out that the town has like a history of like serial killer murders. And it's because like of the witch's curse. And we actually find out like the killers there in the town are just like regular people who are like possessed by the witch to go on killing sprees. And I guess like the main plot of this revolves around like, the main girl and her girlfriend. What happens is like her girlfriend gets into like a car accident caused by the main character throwing a freaking barrel out of a school bus. And she ends up on like the witch's like burial ground or something and like disturbs it. So like several of like the past killers from the town come back to life and start hunting her down. And like the main character and her friends have to like stop these killers and stuff. And that's like the main plot.
This is the modern one, right?
Yeah, this is 1994.
Yeah, okay. Well, not modern, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like the most modern it's going to get.
Yeah, I know. I think it goes backwards in time. So the next one's like in the 70s, and the last one
is in the 1600s. Yeah, the last one's in the 70s, and I think it's 1994 because that's contemporary to the period where the books were popular. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why they went for 1994 instead of like
full Goosebumps popularity.
Yeah, exactly. That at least is my thinking on why they decided to go with 1994 instead of just just like modern day.
Yeah, you can also be fairly modern, but you don't have to worry about like writing cell phones into your stories and stuff.
Right, exactly.
Because they were around, but they weren't common.
They still have like a kid on like AOL Instant Messenger or something on his computer, though. So they're still
nostalgia works on Netflix. You know, you got Stranger Things and stuff.
Yeah, you got Stranger Things, and also like this movie. Also, like they don't want to let you forget that it's the 90s. They don't want you to forget that, so they make sure to like blare like a random 90s song every time like a scene changes.
Is it good 90s music though, or is it?
It's good 90s music.
Okay,
it's good 90s music. There was a
so it's like rock and not like Spice Girls.
Yeah, no Spice Girls. It's all stuff like I listened to heavily in the 90s. So at least the music's good. I mean, they kind of like overdid it with like 90s music, but at least it was like good music. I'll give them that. Yeah, no Spice Girls in this movie.
What are they going to do when they do the 1600s movie? Without the music.
Right, without the music cues. I'm kind of expecting the new
just
one
singing
to like
hymns.
They're just singing hymns. Old-timey church hymns. Every scene transition. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Another thing, like this movie, it's got a lot more like it's got a lot more. It's bloody. There's a lot more blood than I expected. You know, somebody gets a knife stuck through their neck. It's shown on screen.
So definitely going for a more mature than Goosebumps.
Yeah, it's definitely going for more mature than Goosebumps. Yeah, definitely, because people die and they die gruesomely, and there is blood in this.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
I wanted to check it out. I just haven't had the time yet. So yeah, I'm going to probably check that out myself.
Yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think about it. I'm probably going to be checking out part 2. It's interesting because like part 2 has the one girl from Stranger Things, the redhead girl.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of her name right now, but yeah, definitely. She played Max.
Yeah, she played Maxine in Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in part 2 apparently from the previews.
Yeah, Netflix does that like a lot of other channels do, where they'll like use a lot of the same actors again and stuff. Because they got Maya Hawke in the first one, you said, right? So that's an our Stranger Things alum.
That's an our Stranger Things alum. Yeah,
it'll be like Finn Wolfwood on the third one. So lastly, I started playing some Switch demos. I have quite a few Switch demos built up on my system, and I said I need to just get around to playing them, get through them, and try them out. And I said, hey, that'll be good discussion for the show. So I played Disgaea 6, Monster Hunter Stories 2, and Game Builder Garage. So I'll start with Game Builder Garage, because that's probably like the least impressive for me specifically. I'm not saying that it's not impressive, because it is, but it's just, it doesn't really do that much for me. That's not something I'm going to be interested in.
You're not going to be making games?
No.
I was looking forward to Tysonware, like your own version, like you're going to become Wario and make your own game development company.
No, it's a bit limited in the sense that it's like, you're kind of stuck with their assets. You can apparently draw some later on. The demo doesn't really get into that.
I mean, I don't know how it's limited. Like somebody like literally made like a Sonic the Hedgehog game, and I don't think Nintendo included Sonic the Hedgehog assets in the.
No, you can draw some assets and stuff, but you're still like you're
I
limited.
Seen things
you can't
online. I seen like somebody did like F-Zero. Somebody else did like a Mario Kart.
F-Zero, I have to imagine, runs pretty slow though for an F-Zero game based on the way the physics work. What I mean is that there's a lot that's like, there's a lot of stuff you can do with this game, but then there's also a lot of like limitations that you can't change. So like you can add in a jump, and the jump actually works pretty well. I mean, it works the way a jump should work in a platformer, in that, the longer you hold the button, the further your jump goes, So it has that like good Nintendo feeling jump mechanic to the jump. But like, let's say you don't want that. You want something tighter or something. Well, that's the jump. That's what you have.
You can't adjust that too.
Yeah. So that's kind of like where I think like the limitations are and stuff for me, which like when I say limitations, yes, it is very impressive what you can do with the game, but it's just, I think you're going to end up seeing a lot of like fan recreations of other games is what you're going to get most of from this, rather than like actual like labors of love from anybody.
Which is to be like, nobody would like, You shouldn't go into it expecting Unity, but
or even like RPG Maker or something.
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah, I didn't expect more than what I got. It's not like I was let down or something. There was a demo, so I got it. You know, like I knew this probably wasn't going to be for me, but there was a demo and I wanted to check it out. One thing I can say is that they give a lot of personality in the tutorials and stuff, which is the part you play in the demo. They give a lot of personality to all the different like kind of nodes that you link together to kind of like, you know, make them work like that. They have like two cursor ones. There's the one for the main levels and there's the one that gives you more details. And the one that gives you more details is always kind of like dull, like, oh yeah, let's work on this now or something, you know, but like in a kind of charming way. So it's really kind of, that's kind of cool and stuff. I played through the whole demo, which just kind of, it has you put together one game basically. There's a different, every stage of the tutorial basically covers a different game. And then you do that in steps. So you'll do like one step where you build the outline of the level. And then the next step you build in the mechanics of the level. And then the next step you build like differing platforms. And, you know, like this, it kind of like goes through like step by step how you build the game. And the demo covers the first game, basically. So you finish it. And so it is kind of cool that you feel at the end, even though it's not your game, you're just doing what they tell you to, that you've literally just done all the programming work, or not the programming, but you've connected the blocks for the programming entirely yourself to put this game together, you know, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's just not for me. If you're into that kind of stuff, it's pretty cool. I played Disgaea 6. I was a big fan of Disgaea. I was never really able to get into any of the other games in the series. I just didn't have the money or time when the other PlayStation 2 ones came out. I didn't have a PlayStation 3 for when those ones came out. I got 5 on the Switch, but I think because it included all the kind of DLC and all the benefits from that, it just kind of distracted me and I wasn't really able to get too much into that. One thing I can say about Disgaea 6 that I really liked is that it gets you quickly into the game. Whereas like when I was playing Disgaea 5, as somebody who'd played a Disgaea game before, there's things that I wanted to get into. I'm like, okay, I want to get into Item World. I want to get into this. I want to get into that. There's this very specific things I wanted to tool around with, tinker with, you know? And it was putting a lot of like story, and it's like comedic story, and some of it hits, a lot of it didn't. And it was just taking too long to get to anything, and I was kind of like losing interest. Where with Disgaea 6, I think it's pretty quick to get you in. Like, you know, every time you play another section of a level, it opens up a new section of the game for you, something else you can do, and it all goes pretty quickly. Like it doesn't move too slowly like I think Disgaea 5 did in its opening. But yeah, the big change for Disgaea 6 in the franchise is that there's they went 3D for the first time, where it was always sprite based before.
Right.
I still am not quite that much of a fan of the look of the 3D one, but you start to kind of like, you know, not pay attention after a certain point. Like you just get used to it. Yeah, I liked it. I'm interested in buying the game. I just haven't yet. The one concern I've seen from like reviews is that they say it just goes too far with like your level cap and stuff, which if you've ever played a Disgaea game, you know that like half the fun of the games is kind of like breaking the game. Mm-hmm. Like it intentionally lets you break it. Like there's parts in the game where you can literally like go and put up a proposal in front of a bunch of monsters in the game and change the game. So you can say like, you can go in front of a proposal and say like, I want better items in the item shop, or I want to change this item, this aspect of the game to be more like this instead of that, you know? And then you put it to a vote. But like before you put it to a vote, you can like bribe or fight like the individual people that are going to be voting. So you can like bribe them, or you can like fight them and beat them into submission to like vote the way you want them to.
That's funny.
And it's all like stuff basically to like break the game. Like it's all like the whole point of the game is like it doesn't really need to be difficult, because the whole fun is like just finding new ways to break the game and become absurdly OP and like, you know, just do different things like that. And that's what Disgaea is all about, you know? So I was seeing some of that. I've heard that it goes a little too far in that direction on this game, because now you could like, your level can go up to like something like 1 million or something like that. And it's kind of ridiculous, and it's really funny, but like at the same time, it's like, it's almost like just too far, you know? Like,
Right.
that's what I've heard, at least. I haven't gotten to anything like that in the demo, anything of that scale. But yeah, it's really funny. I'd recommend people check out the demo. If you've never played a Disgaea game, I think it's actually a pretty good introduction to the series, just because, like I said, we're 5. There was like way too long where you're stuck like reading through comedy bits, waiting to get to play the game. And this one just kind of moves along much quicker, at least at the beginning and at least in the demo. So yeah, I'd recommend checking that out if you haven't played a Disgaea game. And if you have played a Disgaea game, then you already know kind of what you're in for. And then lastly, the last demo I played was Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Rune. I've always been interested in Monster Hunter, but I've always played Monster Hunter and I've never liked it. I've never really liked Monster Hunter games. I always felt that they moved too slow. It feels similar to like Tekken to me, in the sense that like you hit a button and then you wait a few seconds for it to finish its animation. And it just doesn't feel quick, you know, and that always bothered me. And I just couldn't get into the games, you know, and I'm not into like absurd difficulty and like having to prepare for hours and stuff, you know, for a fight. Like, I've just never been into that. I'm not into the Souls games either. I'm not into Monster Hunter. It's nothing that it's the kind of game that just doesn't click with me. Like, I don't look at it and say this is a bad game. It just doesn't click with me.
I love how you lump like Monster Hunter with like the Souls games. They're not that similar.
They're both hard and require a lot of preparation and refighting and stuff like that.
And I went straight from like freaking Dark Souls 3 to like Monster Hunter Rise. And like, I'm playing Monster Hunter and I'm just like going, oh shit, why isn't there a roll button?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this thing is like fucking dominating me. What? I can't do anything. Like, it's not a smooth transition at all.
Yeah. I don't mean that the games are similar in like playstyle and stuff. I just mean in the sense of like, I think that the people that like those games like them for similar reasons.
Right.
Like, they like them because the difficulty spike. They like them because you have to put a lot in to get good at it. And that just doesn't interest me. Like, it's...
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, like for me, like, I think one of the biggest joys of playing a Souls game is like, you're going up against incredible odds. And you get to like a boss, and then when you finally like defeat that boss, the immense feeling of satisfaction is just, it's like a high. It's like a high that you want to continue chasing that high.
Yeah. And see, that just doesn't interest me.
Right.
Like, it's just, you know, it's one of those things. Like I say, like, I don't say the game is bad, because it's not. It just does not click with me. But I've always been interested in the setting, and the monsters always looked amazing to me. Like, I always loved watching the way they animated and stuff and like videos, and always thought that was really cool. But I just couldn't really get into it. And then I had so many friends that played it that I could never understand a word they were saying when they were talking about the games. So many different terminologies and stuff that I'm just like, okay, I'm lost. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I haven't played a lot of Monster Hunter. I've dabbled in Monster Hunter. I'm a Monster Hunter dabbler.
Yeah.
I've never spent a lot, even with like, I haven't played much of Rise. I've had it for several months now and haven't played more than maybe like several hours.
You just got past the title screen.
Yeah, I just got past that title screen and I was like, oh, that's good for now. I don't know. Yeah. So I can't say like I'm a huge Monster Hunter fanboy, because I'd be lying.
Yeah.
It's a game that's interested me, but yeah, it is kind of difficult to get into because like it is so dense. There's a lot of stuff to take in consideration. There's a lot of stats. There's a lot item crafting has like a really deep item crafting system where you get like parts from monsters that you kill and you can craft those into new weapons and armor. And there's like thousands of that stuff. So, you know, and you gotta like consider your loadouts for each hunt. There's a lot. It's really complex. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. But because I've always been interested in setting and stuff, I was actually kind of excited about Monster Hunter Stories. I wasn't really interested in the first game because I don't play handheld games. That's another thing. As we talk about more games that will come up with me, I'm not into playing handheld. It's just the comfort.
You miss the majesty of the GBA or the 3DS.
I played back in the GBA days and the original DS a little bit, and then I just started it just started bothering me. My hands cramped too much. It's like I can't get into a comfortable position to play it.
That's why you missed Monster Hunter Stories 1.
Yeah, exactly. So I just like to sit on a couch and lean back and play, on a big TV screen. That's kind of like my preferred gaming experience. So I was actually kind of excited about Monster Hunter Stories 2 coming to Switch, because it's like, okay, now I can get past the parts of Monster Hunter that don't work with me. And I can also get past the fact that I'm just not into portable. I can actually just lay back on my couch and play this on my big screen TV. So I'm like, okay, cool. This is going to be great. So I tried it out. I think my initial reaction was I thought the controls were a little clunky and a little slow, kind of turning on a monster felt slow. And so I had a few little, gripes that I was kind of working through at the very beginning. But as I started getting into the gameplay loop of finding a monster egg and hatching it and leveling it up, and the way the combat system worked, and, buying gear and upgrading it, and, doing the side quest and things like that. Once I started getting into those gameplay loops, I ended up just playing the game for just 8 hours straight. To the point where it was messing with my sleep. I should have gone to sleep. I only intended to play the game for about 2 hours and then go to bed, and then I played for another 6. So I got really into the gameplay loop to the point that right when I was finishing the game, and I haven't even finished the demo yet, but I was looking up, does this save data transfer over? When I buy the game,
so you're buying the game?
Almost assuredly.
Oh, man.
I'd say it's about 99% chance I'm going to get this game.
I had a feeling, I had the inkling that you would be more receptive to Monster Hunter Stories.
Yeah, definitely. It's a turn-based RPG, which I like. And there's just a lot of gameplay loop in there, and that's fun, and I enjoy it. So yeah, Monster Hunter Stories 2 is a lot of fun for me. If you've been interested in Monster Hunter, but the main series is just too much, check out Monster Hunter Stories 2. Again, like I said, there's a demo, and the save data does carry over. So that's going to be good for me. So I'll be probably picking up the full game to continue my play on.
Sweet.
Now we're going to move on to our main topic. Full spoilers, Loki. Okay, so we're talking about episode 5, Journey into Mystery.
Yeah, Journey into Mystery, which is the name of the comic book where Loki and Thor first appeared.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool right there. Title's an Easter egg.
So yeah, I mean, story-wise, there's not a lot to talk about in this. There's Thor wakes up in a transplanted realm that he's in. That's kind of like the end of time, basically, or not the end of time, but right before it's like a void before the end of time.
Thor wakes up.
Oh, Loki, I mean, wakes up in this period of time. There is a version of Thor in this.
There is. It's an Easter egg.
Yes. But Loki wakes up. He's in this void before the end of time. He runs into a bunch of other Lokis. They're betraying each other. Actually pretty funny. And then on the other end, Sylvie ends up pruning herself after she at first tries to work with Ravonna to figure out what's going on, and then is Ravonna basically is just stalling for time.
Yeah.
And so she ends up pruning herself.
Well, it's interesting because Ravonna and Sylvie basically want the same thing, to find out who's behind the TVA.
But for different reasons. Yeah.
For different reasons. But, Ravonna's also well, as long as there's nobody, we don't know who's really in charge, but as far as everybody knows, I'm in charge. So she's nominally in charge of the TVA, so she's going to wield that power.
So now that Sylvie is pruned herself and she's going into the void before the end of time with the goal of getting to whoever started the TVA and whoever's behind the TVA and everything that's going on, believing that that's where the person is. And Ravonna now is trying to figure it out quickly too, so that she can stop Sylvie from killing the TVA, So yeah, that's mainly the story of this episode of what's going on. They get there. There's a giant smoke monster, which is Alioth from the comics. He's kind of a working as a guard dog. Alioth is frequently paired with Kang, who everyone is kind of thinking that is involved in the story. I think it's going to be a similar situation to WandaVision, in which, like how, we didn't get Mephisto in WandaVision. Right, I don't think we're going to get Kang in this.
No, we're not seeing Kang in this for sure.
Although Kang, we do know who's playing Kang, and yes. He's going to be in the next Ant-Man movie.
Yes. He's going to be in the next Ant-Man movie. So this could tie directly into Ant-Man, but we're not seeing Kang show up in this, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's very unlikely that we end up seeing Kang. It's going to be like the Mephisto thing all over again, where, everybody thought Mephisto was going to show up in WandaVision.
Mephisto's not in this either.
Yeah, Mephisto's not in this either. Wouldn't that be funny if Mephisto showed up in this?
Yeah, it would be funny, yeah.
It's the first appearance of the real Mandarin, isn't this? Like, for some reason.
For no reason at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, the realm is basically where they've been dumping everything they pruned, all the realities they pruned.
It's at the end of time.
Yeah, they end up in this void, and then Alioth goes through and eats it, whatever ends up showing up there.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the surviving people there are Lokis, because the Lokis they're survivors.
Yeah, and these are the surviving Lokis, which they explain, they're Lokis. All they do is, like, plan and,
plot.
and plot.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's plotting ways to stay alive as long as they can. And we met the Lokis at the end of the last episode.
Yeah, old Loki, kid Loki, and boastful Loki.
Yep, and alligator Loki.
Yeah, alligator Loki. The best of all Lokis.
The best Loki.
Yeah, you get a lot of funny interactions between the different Lokis. They all hate each other pretty much.
Yeah, they all pretty much hate each other. I really loved the different characterizations. I particularly loved, old Loki is basically like a Loki in his timeline. It sounds like he went through, like, the same events as our Loki, except, he managed to escape being killed by Thanos. And then he kind of, way he describes, he kind of ended up realizing, that the motivations that driven him were wrong, so he ends up coming to the conclusion that he needed to be a better person, which is interesting. And then he says, he ended up, on a planet, and then when he got lonely, he went to look for Thor, and that's when the TVA captured him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have Kid Loki, who ends up saying that his Nexus event, was that he killed Thor.
Yeah, he killed his version of Thor, which is damn, dude.
And then you have Boastful Loki, who tells a story about how he had all the Infinity Stones, and he took out the Avengers and everything.
Yeah, he took out the Avengers.
Everybody calls bullshit on him.
Yeah, everybody called bullshit on that. It's shut up, dude. Alligator Loki had, a really interesting backstory of being an alligator.
Eating the wrong house cat.
Yeah, he ate the wrong house cat. That was his Nexus event.
At least that's what Boastful Loki said.
That's what Boastful Loki said, yeah.
And then we got a bunch more Lokis, but only one more that's actually kind of relevant, that had anything interesting about them. It's just, we see a group when our Loki is about to leave this group, because he's just it's just a bunch of squabbling Lokis. I need to get out of here. And when he goes to leave, he opens up the hatch and you see a whole group more Lokis, led by President Loki, who's there, and he's kind of leading this group, and they want to take over this place. It kicks off a big fight between all the Lokis, and it turns out Boastful Loki is who backstabbed old Loki and Kid Loki and Alligator Loki. But yeah, old Loki, Kid Loki, and, Alligator Loki all kind of escape with our Loki.
We missed an opportunity here to have Loki from Earth 8311 in here. Loki is from the Marvel Animalverse, and he is an anthropomorphic dog version of Loki from Arfsgard. Yeah.
Oh, we got Alligator Loki. So.
He was punished by Odarn by having his nose rubbed in it and hit with a newspaper.
But yeah, so the last interesting one we had, though, was President Loki, who got his hand bitten off by Alligator
Which, President Loki, they showed him briefly in, previews. I thought it was just Loki, being wacky, but apparently that turned out to be a completely different Loki.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, what crazy situation did Loki get himself into where he's, got these people around him and he's doing... Oh wait, no.
Well, it was looking like Loki was leading a big group of other Lokis to invade the TVA, but none of that happened. That was
none of that happened. Yeah, it turned out to be a different Loki. Also, the first alternate Loki to also be played by Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
So, kind of a swerve there. but that was great, yeah, because like friggin' alligator Loki like bit off his hand.
I just love the whole betrayal scene where it was like, you know, it turned out boastful Loki had betrayed them, and then he's all, now I'll be king, and President Loki's like, well.
Well.
And then he betrayed them, and then immediately after saying, like, of course, because I'm king or something, and then like somebody behind him put their weapon to his back.
Yeah,
said, what do you mean you're king?
all the Lokis he was leading like turn on him.
Yeah.
And then it just turns into complete chaos.
Yeah, it was really funny. I also love that when they were talking
scene.
about all the different Lokis, like our Loki brought up a female Loki, and old Loki was like terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying.
And so, as I had mentioned, Sylvie pruned herself. So
she ends up in the void.
In contact with
she
Mobius.
Comes across Mobius in the void, who has also managed to keep himself alive so far. You know, so she has some good scenes with Mobius before they catch up with Loki and the other Lokis. And, you know, Loki, it should be pointed out, Loki, when he arrived in the void, he first devised, he's planning to kill this thing, this smoke monster, if you will.
The Alioth,
Yeah, the Alioth. But, you know, like, when a battleship ends up in the void, and we see how easily, like, that thing, like, disables it, it kind of becomes clear, like, how futile Loki's plans to kill it are.
Yeah, because they're like, he'll be distracted by a big prey, like that battleship, and then we'll go around its back, and it's like, it just eats it in like a second.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's not going to work. And then...
So Sylvie has a better plan.
Yeah.
Which is she's going to enchant it.
Yes. And she gets this plan because she actually, when she was running from it, when she first got there, she kind of swiped her hand through it and tried to enchant it. And in the brief moment she was able to make any connection, she saw that she was actually able to get some headway in. She saw part of its memories.
Yeah.
She saw what lies past it, what it's guarding. And then she's like, this means I can enchant it. I just need to, you know, work on a way that I'm able to do it. And, so they go about enchanting, and they enchant it, and they see a giant, like castle on the rocks in the distance.
Well, yeah, I should say, before we get there though, I do want to highlight the great scene with like old Loki where he's using like all of his power.
Oh, making like a full Asgard.
Making a full projection of Asgard in an effort to distract this creature, you know, long enough for the two, Sylvie and Loki to enchant it.
Again, top-notch budget on the show.
Yeah, top-notch, but that was an excellent scene. Sadly, old Loki does sacrifice himself doing that. But yeah, it's fantastic.
It distracts Alioth enough for them to actually enchant, both Lokis together enchant.
Yeah, both Lokis.
Alioth.
Sylvie convinces Loki that he also has the power of enchantment. He just needs to do it.
Yeah, she's like, well, you're a Loki too, so you should have this as well. And then he does.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they break through the guard dog.
Yeah, they break through guard dog and they reveal a castle, which apparently they're going to go to in the next episode, the last episode. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to wait till next week to find out what's in that castle.
We're going to see who's in that castle, and I believe it's just going to be another Loki.
Yeah. Maybe it's Loki. Maybe he's in that castle all along. They didn't forget about him. It's Loki. They didn't forget about him.
Yeah. So what's more interesting, I think, about this episode is just the tons and tons of Easter eggs. Because this is like the whole episode pretty much takes place in this void where all these things from different, you know, all these variant things from different worlds end up. There's just tons of Easter eggs. We'd mentioned before that there is a Thor in this one. It's actually Throg, who is the Thor frog, and he's in a jar that's like buried.
Because there was a storyline in the Thor comics where Loki manages to trick Odin into turning Thor into a frog. And so Thor spends some time as a frog thanks to Loki.
But what's funny here is that you just see this Throg desperately trying to get out of this jar, and there's a Mjolnir right like next to him.
Yeah, he's trying to get to his hammer, but he's in this jar. That was pretty funny.
I think the funniest Easter egg was the Thanos copter.
The Thanos copter, god damn.
Even just straight up says Thanos on it.
That is fantastic. I can't believe they actually did that. That is great.
There was also a giant Yellow Jacket helmet from the villain from the first Ant-Man movie. Apparently, he unlocked the same ability that Ant-Man did to become Giant Man, but got pulled in as a variant, and only his helmet remains. And then in the last episode, a lot of people thought that what ended up being the Void was actually, they thought it was New York, because it looked like there was an Avengers Tower in the background.
Right.
We find out that, in fact, of course, this isn't New York, but this is, a lot of those buildings are probably from New York, Yeah,
I mean, it's going to be a mishmash of stuff. It's like all the realities they've been pruning are collected into a Void, so it's not, it's a mishmash.
But the other thing is that instead of Avengers Tower, it's Kang Enterprises Tower.
Right, yeah.
Kang being with a Q, Q-E-N-G Enterprises, which, the company is run by Nathaniel Richards, who actually is Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah,
who,
exactly.
As we've mentioned, is probably not going to be in the show, but is definitely coming to the MCU.
Yeah, he's confirmed to be coming to the MCU.
Yeah, he's cast and everything. But yeah, we also see Ronin's ship from Guardians of the Galaxy is crashed there. And you see the head of a statue of the Living Tribunal as well.
Yes.
So there's a bunch of other stuff. There's other statue heads and stuff in there that, who knows who it is. If you pause through and go through, you could probably find out more. There's these weird creatures that are running by every so often that I have no idea what those are, but they're probably some other Easter egg that, people just haven't picked up on. There's also all sorts of stuff. That's what kind of made this episode really fun for me, is just kind of all the stuff everywhere, because this is basically the multiverse dumping ground.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's pretty much it for this episode. Just gonna have to see what ends up being in that castle and where the story goes from here. I'm feeling more and more like this is also a mini series. Whereas before the show aired, I thought Loki might be one of the ones that gets another season or something.
Yeah, this is more like a mini series.
It just feels like a self-contained story,
Yeah.
So I'm this just like the other ones, this feels like a self-contained story, so it's probably not gonna work that way. But yeah, that's it. Next week we'll be talking about the season finale, or perhaps series finale. So I guess we'll just end off there. That's it for the podcast. Thank you everybody for listening. As usual, my Twitter handle is @TysonGifford. Will's is @VoxelHero. You can send us feedback through Twitter, and please do. If you have any questions, or if you just want to make a point, or if you know what those weird creatures are that were running around in the void, let us know. And we'll be back next week, as I said, to talk about the last episode and whatever news or whatever else we're playing or whatever else we're looking forward to at that point. We might talk about Black Widow. I'm going to go see that on Friday. That's out on Friday, so everybody remember that. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Night.
And chaos! Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of Little Screen. Visit our website at littlescreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.